Yes, his videos are getting better. Let's say that. His videos are getting better. And let's watch... I want to watch America's Stalingrad. We can watch that next. What? Wow. I think we're watching this one next. The Armchair Historian, America's Stalingrad, the Battle of Aachen. I know nothing about this. No idea what happened in Aachen, man. No clue. Tony, we're gonna watch the Finland video about you, okay? And then Shekel's gonna be like, can you watch my Israel video? And then everybody gets the video, and then we're all happy. Let's watch the Battle of Aachen.
The shadows have just begun to lengthen in the streets of Aachen, and an American rifle team creeps cautiously along an ancient street,
man.
backs to imposing Gothic architecture.
Aachen is not in Germany, question mark.
By artillery fire, the giant stone monuments still retain the grandeur of a former capital city. Behind the team, an M4 Sherman slowly crawls into the open, and the street behind the tank erupts in flame. One GI snaps toward the source of the misdirected rocket, and instead of a fanatic SS grenadier, his eyes meet the terrified gaze of a trembling old man. A motley crew of elders and boys fire down at the Americans with a hodgepodge of antique firearms. The GI's view is obscured by smoke and debris as the Sherman's main gun fires into the ground floor of the closest building, bringing it crashing down with a roar of falling masonry.
These animations are so
GIs come
man.
to a grim realization. Even in their chaotic desperation, the Germans intend to make them pay for every inch of Aachen in blood.
And I think it's always very important to understand that their intentions came from indoctrination from the fascist party, NSDAP, and Adolf Hitler, right? Which is so sad, right? You have these Nazis nowadays that think, I will die for my country. Like, all these people died because of one party just being fucking retarded. I was just watching last month, Downfall for the first time, and the movie was a bit about Hitler not accepting his defeat and pulling everyone around him, all the civilians, into this shit. Literally saying, I think on record, his secretary said it in an interview, he literally said, if the German people die in this war, they deserve it. Evolution has stopped them. They don't deserve to be here anymore. Like, the worst thing ever, dude. How can anyone ever... Like, I feel like if you're a patriotic German, if you are pro-German and you love your country, you have to be against this time of history, man. Because it's the worst thing that ever happened to Germany, man. So many innocent lives taken because of one mentally ill man. As we see in Ukraine now, one mentally ill man,
Hi, I'm Griffin
thousands
Johnson,
dead.
the Armchair Historian. As chill autumn winds began blowing across the battlefields of Europe, over 230,000 Allied soldiers crept toward the ancient city of Aachen. Strategically, Aachen was of minimal significance.
One sec. I'm a German, and I have no idea on God's forsaken earth where the fuck Aachen is. Aachen is, I think Aachen is like here. I think Aachen is like here. Don't say shit. Shut up. I think Aachen must be like here or so. Where the fuck's Aachen? Fuck off, chat. I'm not looking at you. You know everything. Yeah, Alter. You don't even know where the girls are. Okay, where the fuck is Aachen, Alter? Oh, it's that far west? Wow. Holy shit. I never knew. No idea. Damn. Right next to Belgium and France. No, Luxembourg and... Belgium and Netherlands. Jesus, fuck me. What the fuck is this thing here in the Netherlands? You Belgians, you let the Netherlands take this? Like, the natural borders will be that, like, this belongs to Belgium. Yo, you Belgians need to defend yourself. What the fuck, man? Stealing from you guys. Okay, that's Aachen. Oh, man, no idea, bro.
They stop along one of the four main roads leading to Germany's industrial heartland. Hardly a natural fortress, the city sat in a depression surrounded by hills, and most of its defenses were provided by two parallel belts of the West Wall. Yet in addition to being the very first ethnically German city besieged by the Allies, Aachen had once been the capital city of Adolf Hitler's beloved First Reich, known by more rational historians as the Holy Roman Empire. Naturally, any threat to this symbolic city called for a fanatical response, and Hitler was ready to commit all available forces to its defense. During the Second World War, the Information War was fought just as fiercely for territory and resources. Agencies on both sides sought to crack codes, sabotage operations, and spread misinformation at every opportunity. But thanks to the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN, internet users can be protected from security threats, malware, and phishing attempts using military-grade encryption technology that the Allied and Axis powers could only dream of. NordVPN allows you to change your virtual location with the click of a button to bypass region locking and content restrictions, letting you view documentaries and historical material anywhere at any time. Nord has also just launched its new app feature, Threat Protection. For no additional cost, Threat Protection offers an additional layer of security for your web browsing by blocking malicious files, websites, malware, and trackers, even when you're not connected to a VPN server. Support our channel and get an exclusive discount plus free anti-malware by signing up to NordVPN today using the link in the description or by visiting nordvpn.com/historyvpn.
There you go. We watched this video for free, so we gotta listen. Show some respect. Aachen was the capital of Charlemagne's empire.
Unfortunately for Adolf Hitler, the Nazi governors of Aachen had taken one look at the onrushing Allied armies and promptly abandoned the civilian population to its fate.
And that is so insane, man. And it shows that the people that are fanatical about their leaders, like let's say Russians that are fanatical about Putin or Germans were fanatical about the NSDAP and Hitler, they ditch you in a second. They don't give a fuck about you, man. Despots, fascists, communists, they only care about themselves, man. They don't give a fuck about you. They just want your vote. They just want to get in power, man. They will fucking backstab you the second they can, man. The Democrats do that too. But they do it in capitalism, right? They're like, hey man, 8% inflation? At least you're alive in the end, you know?
Infuriated by this display of...
And if anyone with basic understanding of history, man, if you're nowadays a hardcore communist or hardcore right-winger, if history does not show you that you're a fucking idiot, man, then no one can help you, man. You're just lost.
Cowardice. Hitler had the officials arrested by the SS and shipped off to the Eastern Front. By the time General Gerhard von Schwerin dragged the shattered remnants of his 116th Panzer Division through the city, he found it full of thousands of terrified civilians and a ragtag collection of Volkssturm militia. Knowing a lost cause when he saw one, von Schwerin paused just long enough to leave a letter at the post office, designating Aachen as an open city for the incoming Allied forces. The deeply unlucky general then ran headfirst into orders coming the other direction, telling him to turn his division around and return to the city for a last stand.
The 116th would withdraw from the city and be replaced before fighting reached Aachen itself and ended up as part of the force counterattacking to the east.
Naturally, he had been gone just long enough for a sharp-eyed Schutzstaffel to have found the letter, and he was promptly relieved of command. Defense of the sector now fell on the shoulders of Lieutenant General Friedrich J. Kochling's 81st Corps, consisting mainly of 2 Volksgrenadier and 2 infantry divisions. While the Germans scrambled to put together a viable strategy, the 3 Army Corps of the American First Army under General Courtney H. Hodges crept closer and closer. Despite the apparently tenuous nature of the German defenses, nobody was under any illusions about the meat grinder that lay ahead. Sergeant Harley Reynolds of the Bloody 1st Division described the mood thusly. I can remember the talk and comments about the city of Aachen, that no way would the Germans give...
It's good to be back, Chad. I just want to real quick, I have this weird feeling right now that I just want to say, it's good to be back. I just want to say it's good to be back. It's really good to be back, guys. Okay, let's keep going.
This city without a fight to the last German standing. We talked about this among the ranks. I felt there was a good chance that they would possibly drive us back with a big counterattack. We were a finger sticking out in front of the US line, a very dangerous position. Surprisingly enough, the initial skirmishes that took place as the First Army moved to breach the west wall around Aachen in early September proceeded with minimal casualties. While 3 infantry regiments pushed through the forest to the west side of the city, 2 armored regiments began a flanking attack towards the town of Stolberg. At first, the attackers were daunted by the sheer scale of the defensive works they encountered. Hundreds of pillboxes and dozens of bunkers with overlapping fields of fire.
These soldiers taking down the Germans, these Americans, they had a lot of white privilege, right?
Anti-tank obstacles. Yet resistance was light, as the Eastern Front was still occupying the majority of German manpower, leaving only a scattering of exhausted veterans and walking wounded to man a network of defenses originally intended to be garrisoned by entire armies. Unfortunately, General Courtney's swift progress was ground to an abrupt halt by factors beyond his control.
Hey, you guys wonder why I never react to fucking videos, Alter? Because everybody thinks it's invitational. Can I send you a video about the Chechen War? What the fuck happened to Steel Division? Like, my god, I can't react to... I just want to play World of Warcraft. Because when I play World of Warcraft, I have 700 viewers, and they're all cool. They fucking chill, man. This shit is giving me the blood pressure, bro. I don't want to watch your Chechen video, Junge.
Break they needed to get their act together. The Allied supply situation had been shaky at best since the Normandy landings, and it would not improve for the boys near Aachen. As September rolled in, the planners of Operation Market Garden, which occurred at about the same time, seemingly did...
I heard that before. I thought, oh, here we go. I might be wrong. Market Garden is the Allies fucking with the whole Benelux into Germany region. That's like Market Garden, right?
Their best to waste as much fuel, ammunition, and manpower as possible in their abortive attempt to breach German lines in the Netherlands. Having been bumped far down the priority list, the men of the First Army trudged onwards, trying to make best use of the good weather whilst their supplies dwindled. On the 22nd of September, the same day Operation Market Garden ended, the 16th Infantry Regiment was on the verge of capturing the town of Eilendorf, just south of Aachen, when they abruptly came under massive artillery fire.
Survivors of the barrage will later go on to describe it as the worst shelling they have ever experienced, even heavier than at D-Day. And all of this is so unnecessary, right? The Nazi party must have known they're already done here, man. Just all unnecessary bullshit.
As the smoke cleared, the German 12th Infantry Division arrived to politely inform the Allies that the good times were over, and the real fight had just begun. Though few in number, the professional soldiers of the 12th had been supplemented by a swarm of Volkssturm militia, and traumatized Americans later recalled the sight of women and children fighting with pistols, knives, and even Panzerfaust anti-tank weapons.
Like, imagine seeing that in real life, man, and the only reason they do that is the indoctrination, man. Just so unnecessary, man. And then you might even have to shoot these civilians because they're a threat to you, man. And then everybody is fucking traumatized for fucking generations. You become a heavy drinker. You hit your kids, man. And then 2 generations down, your fucking child becomes a furry, man, because of all this shit.
One commander reported that the Germans had simply gone mad and are bent on destroying themselves.
Jesus, man.
The Americans were able to hold their positions during the savage engagement, but were prevented from advancing just long enough for heavy cloud cover to descend over the region, eliminating the possibility of close air support. Now experiencing major shortages of fuel, heavy munitions, and spare parts for armored vehicles, the frustrated men of the First Army were forced to halt all offensive operations until the first week of October. During this critical period, Lieutenant General Cochling's 81st Corps was heavily reinforced. The exact number of German soldiers committed to the battle is impossible to determine, but by the 2nd of October, around 24,000 raw recruits, traumatized veterans, SS fanatics, and terrified Volkssturm stood ready to give their lives to defend the capital of the actual Thousand-Year Reich. Together, they huddled in their bunkers and pillboxes as the Allies saturated the region with artillery fire and bombing raids between September 27th and October 2nd, after which the ground offensive resumed.
It's so interesting how, man, when I was young, and you guys feel the same. When I was young, I liked war games. I liked to buy plastic guns and be out with the boys. Pew, 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 I kill you. You were really into war. And once you get older, man, I know I sound like a dad now. I know I sound like this old man that you see on Christmas that says weird things that you don't understand yet. But the more you get old, the more you understand how fucking dumb war is, man. War is necessary sometimes. Like, you gotta fuck up the Nazis. It makes sense. But deep in its core, right, look at Ukraine. It's just so unnecessary. It's such a waste of everything. It just makes... And I didn't think like that 10 years ago, right? Tell that to Grisha. Grisha is, what, 14? God damn, when I was 14, I wanted to join the army because I was stupid, man. You're a dad? No, I'm becoming a dad. And it's just... And it's funny how every time you look at these videos and you study wars, it always comes down... If you do the pyramid up, it always comes down to one man. It's always a man. Makes sense. That is just a bit... That is kind of mentally ill, but made it to a high political position because of a mental illness. Which once again brings me to my technocratic thinking that we shouldn't have leaders anymore. We should have councils, checks and balances. No single man, no Hitler, no Putin should have this power to bring over the world, man. And
having now partially enveloped Aachen, the First Army sought to break
one
through
in a
German
million,
lines
man.
in the north to encircle the old capital completely. Sadly for the Americans, the West Wall absorbed the bombardment with barely a scratch, forcing the infantry to begin the incredible laborious process of dislodging the...
I have to really find a woman right now, man. Come on, it's mostly in history fucking men with their egos that shit on everyone. Come on, bro. This is not a feminist statement, it's just a fucking truth of life.
Defenders, one fortification
it's a bunch of dudes with small dicks that are like, I feel offended by NATO. I will go to Ukraine. What the fuck, man? Come on, bro.
In the town of Übach-Palenberg, GIs engaged in brutal urban warfare with the German defenders, which often devolved into both sides flinging grenades at each other until entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble. With most of the bridges in the region having been destroyed, American armored forces were constantly delayed by...
This lack of heavy firepower enabled the Germans to hold a medieval castle at the town of Rimbor and inflict terrible casualties to the
river crossings and were unable to provide support for the infantry.
Oh shit.
By the end of just the first day of fighting, the leading American 117th Infantry Battalion had lost 146 men. Another battalion had 58 wounded and 12 dead. Over 50 pillboxes had been destroyed or captured, but hundreds still lay between the First Army and victory in the sector. Over the next few days, the vicious urban warfare intensified, and GIs quickly learned to approach enemy pillboxes only if flamethrowers or demolition charges were available. Defenders were roasted in their concrete shells or blasted into ruin by tanks and self-propelled guns, but rarely chose to surrender. All the while, German reinforcements raced...
And you know, there's people nowadays that... Dude, I have 1.4 keepers there. There's one guy who's, like, proud of this. He's like, yeah, they didn't give up. Yeah, man. And if you feel like that, man, that's... I feel like the old men now in these movies where the young guy's like, I want to go to war. And the old man is like, no, don't do it. I feel like that guy now. This is all so fucking dumb.
Including the elite first
and there's still people nowadays that celebrate this shit, man. Because they're just so lonely deep inside their souls.
Successfully secured the area around Übach-Palenberg and pushed southwards as far as Alsdorf.
Probably more than one ammo
to enter
streamers, so
itself,
it's probably
which was now
guys.
home to about 5,000 enemy troops. Instead, fighting was concentrated around the suburbs, with the 26th Infantry Division, led by Lieutenant Colonel Daryl M. Daniel, slowly clawing a foothold out of the Ratha-Erda district. Once this area was secured, plans were made for the regiment to push north into the heart of the city. In an effort to avert a bloodbath, Lieutenant General Clarence R. Hubner of the 1st Infantry Division sent an ultimatum to the commander of German forces in Aachen.
Every time I watch World War II content documentaries, I have this urge to play fucking Steel Division. It's such a weird connection to the brain. When you're like, man, this high-level, realistic, military stuff makes me want to play Steel Division.
Colonel Gerhard Wilk on October 10th.
I'm not going to do it. Fuck
in
that,
his letter, Hubner demanded
the
the city surrender or be bombed to oblivion. But Aachen was now fully in the grip of the SS, who were quite ready to execute any soldier who showed even a hint of cowardice. Beyond this fear of capital punishment, the soldiers defending the Aachen section of the West Wall knew that they were now fighting to protect the very heartland of Germany. As a result, the offer was rejected, and Colonel Wilk assumed full responsibility for the defense after establishing his headquarters in the north side of the city.
Steel Division has a new game out? I never heard of that, no. I think on my 24-hour stream I want to play the entire Company Heroes 2 campaign. That maybe interests me a bit.
The 11th of October saw a shift in Allied tactics. With their supply situation stabilizing, mass artillery bombardment commenced on Aachen.
And I just want to say real quick, I mean, Steel Division is not a bad game. I loved Steel Division single player, man. These missions and stuff, like, that was some big fun, man. Thank you, Walter's hydrating. Sometimes when I see that picture on the floor, I think of CK3, so I can relate.
And the surrounding German-held townships. Tired of the bloody street fighting, the Americans were ready to simply level every building that could feasibly hold enemy combatants. This forced the Germans onto the offensive, but their efforts to reclaim the high ground surrounding Aachen all ended in failure. By this point, the picturesque city had been subjected to an on-and-off bombardment for weeks, as well as numerous air raids. But the Gothic architecture had proven surprisingly resilient. With the majority of the 1st Infantry Division holding off German counterattacks, 2 battalions of the 26th Infantry Regiment began to move through the industrial district between Rathe Erde.
But as I look at the city, one thing I always called out about Steel Division 2 is that the cities were too boring. The cities had all the same building. There was no like big 2-story, 5-story buildings. The cities in Steel Division always seemed a bit off.
Their objectives were 3 hills dominating Aachen's northern quarter, which contained the bulk of the 246th Volksgrenadiers and Colonel Wilk's headquarters. By the 12th, the 2nd and 3rd battalions had managed to clear out the industrial district and were ready to enter the narrow, twisted maze of streets that made up the inner city.
Oh, fuck! This is making me want to play Steel Division! You know, like single-player missions? Oh, that was so much fun, dude. Like, I remember the American stuff where you just... Scheiße, man. Maybe soon, maybe soon.
That massing his troops would lead to a slaughter.
Don't
Colonel
do it,
Daniel
Tommy.
split up his men into assault platoons, assigning a single M4 Sherman, or self-propelled gun, to each unit. Upon seeing the massive stone structures at the heart of the city, Daniels issued simple instructions. Knock them all down.
I can't put more on you guys.
Despite letting their artillery rain fire over 10,000 shells prior to the main assault, the first American soldiers to set foot in Aachen were still greeted with a hail of machine gun fire, forcing them to scramble for cover in the imposing stone buildings that lined the narrow streets.
I thought my phone was ringing, sorry.
Here, they were ambushed by wild...
MG42 makes a German think his phone is ringing. Weird.
Volkssturm, who sprung from hidden basements and cellars to engage the GIs in hand-to-hand...
Dark Quest board game launching on Steam. Sponsorship. The Dark Quest.
...combat. The tanks fared little better, being at the mercy of hidden anti-tank guns and lone German soldiers armed with Panzerfausts or sticky grenades. Once again,
dude, shit like this happened in real life, and that is so scary. Imagine you lay on the floor and a guy is trying to put a knife inside of you, and you're like, bro, this is it. Holy shit. Bruh, hopefully an experience that our generation never has to do, but... bunch of fucking Ukrainians have to do it right now.
Again, the attackers were forced to go room by room, checking for Germans waiting to ambush them the instant their backs were turned. As they crawled closer to their objectives, 2nd Battalion was confronted by increasingly tough fortifications, including hardened air raid shelters. Improvising, Colonel John T. Corley ordered an M12 155mm gun mortar carriage to lumber through the streets, the exposed crew no doubt ducking at every shadow as they wheeled into position to blast holes in enemy strongholds at point-blank range.
Look at that fucking thing. The Americans also developed a strategy of using light mortars and artillery to sweep ahead of the main advance. Clever, clearing them out before the infantry even set a foot in them. That makes sense.
Delighted with the results of the attack, Corley rewarded the M12's crew by informing them they would be staying with his men as they advanced deeper into the city. The rest of the day was spent advancing towards Observatory Hill, so named for the observation tower built upon its nearly 900-foot tall crescent. By the end of the 13th, 3rd Battalion had managed to reach the base of one of these 3 hills they had been assigned to capture, prompting Colonel Wilk to request reinforcements from the German divisions still counterattacking to the east. Thanks to the dense urban terrain, several hundred troops and at least a half-dozen assault guns slipped through the tenuous Allied line the next day. They were just in time to engage Colonel Corley's men as they attacked Wilk's headquarters at Farwick Park, where an intense battle raged until the early evening. But as Corley prepared to renew his advance, he was countermanded by Colonel Hübner. The forces outside Aachen had launched another attack, tying up all available reserves. For over 24 hours, General Kochling's 81st Corps battered the beleaguered 1st Division until both sides were utterly exhausted. But aided by artillery and air support, the Americans were able to dig in and weather the assault, then strike back at the collapsing German line with a decisive blow. Finally, the jaws of the Allied pincer movement were able to slam shut, completely encircling Aachen and leaving Colonel Wilk isolated from further reinforcements. Their eastern flank now secure, the 1st Army was able to take its time mopping up the remaining Germans in Aachen. On the 18th, 2nd Battalion resumed its attack on Farwick Park, driving the defenders into the basement with an artillery barrage before sending assault squads in to secure the Quellenhof Hotel. Though Colonel Wilk had already left the hotel, the defenders put up a tremendous fight, hurling grenades from every entrance and forcing GIs back.
It's like unimaginable how that must have felt like, man, to be there, to experience this thing. Unimaginable,
before the Germans finally agreed to surrender.
Thing.
The loss of Farwick Park was a death blow to the German resistance in Aachen, and not even a written order from Colonel Wilk encouraging his troops to fight to the last man inspired much determination. With huge swaths of the city now...
why always this order to die, to fight until the last breath? And if you lost, you fucking lost,
under
man.
American control, the survivors of the 246th Volksgrenadiers were hemmed in on their remaining hilltops, with Observatory Hill falling to the 2nd
Tommy, I'm making sure about that with tomatoes and garlic. Amazing, man. This is really the right moment to talk about this.
More than a mound of rubble, as the Americans systematically demolished any building that could...
Over 80% of the city was destroyed before the end of the battle, putting it in the same category as Dresden when it came to German settlements most damaged by the war.
Even potentially harbor enemy combatants. With essentially no ground left to go, Colonel Wilk was finally cornered in an air raid shelter on the 20th.
This is less than 100 years ago.
That's wheeled his favorite 155mm gun into position outside the fortress, Wilk realized the game was up and dispatched several American POWs to carry a message of surrender to the besiegers. The Battle of Aachen represented one of the worst periods of urban fighting in American history, with the 1st Army sustaining as many as 8,000 casualties during its breach of the West Wall and battle for the city, compared to the 2,400 suffered during the landing on Omaha Beach, popularly considered the bloodiest fight for the US in Europe. German losses amounted to roughly 6,000 dead and over 5,000 prisoners taken. Perhaps the saddest aspect of the fighting was its overall futility. In trying to defend a precious symbol of Nazi ideology, Adolf Hitler had squandered thousands of lives and caused the utter destruction of Charlemagne's ancient capital. Meanwhile, the Americans would ultimately fail to exploit their victory in any meaningful way, instead turning south to try and cut through the Hurtgenwald. This gigantic forest would prove every bit the defenders' paradise, as had Aachen's narrow streets and stone architecture, stalling the 1st Army until February of 1945. Historians now remember the Battle of Aachen as just one more example of how Germany's stubborn refusal to surrender resulted in a pointless waste of life and the destruction of a beautiful city that had stood...
And then the biggest pussy of history, Hitler, just goes bomb so he doesn't ever have to face this responsibility, man.
For well over 1,000 years.
Very good video, man. His animations, I think he's hiring people for that, obviously, yeah. Are very good. Does it say where his sources? Nice. Is he sharing who's animating this? Sources? Not really. Just music? No. doesn't really. I wonder who art team. Oh, here's an art team. There's so many people working on this. Wow, holy crap, man. Damn. I'm always so impressed how a YouTuber, like with 1.6 million, look how many people are working on this, man. Like it's so crazy. Like you guys remember Smosh? Smosh, like 2 young guys from America that made like a comedy channel, and then years later you go back to Smosh, and there's so many people working there. There's Smosh Food, Smosh Spanish, there's Gaming Smosh. They hire 1 million people, camera teams, directors, writers, and it becomes a massive global superpower, massive business. It's crazy, man. The power behind YouTube.